Hello again, you're joining us on this edition of India Tonight. Now, what have we heard about the rematch between Joe Biden and Donald Trump? Both these leaders have got their respective nominations from their parties. As far as Donald Trump is concerned, he says China is America's boss and Putin should get a free hand if America's allies don't pay up. And don't forget, he says India is the tariff king. These are the words of Donald Trump, who has now secured the Republican Party nomination. So has President Biden, and now this rematch that we are talking about, which has been scheduled, how is the world and India preparing for whoever wins the presidential race? We will focus on that in this discussion. And to do that, Ajay Bagga is joining us, market expert, our constant friend here at ET Now, and Chief Market Economist at Spartan Capital Securities. Peter Cardillo also joining us from the US. Great to have you with us, gentlemen. You know, now that the Trump-Biden rematch has been confirmed and we have historical context to how Wall Street has performed during both these regimes, Peter, let me ask you first. This time, which of the two candidates would Wall Street like to see back in the Oval Office and why?
Well, we know presently what we have. We know the Biden economics. He's obviously going to continue this in his second term. And for better or worse, the markets really have been outperforming. And so the threat is obviously expanding deficits that could be a problem for the bond market and certainly for the Fed in the future. So that's one of the negatives. In terms of Trump, well, we already had a Trump presidency, and we know what he is all about. We know his policies. Some are good, some are bad. But you did point out in your opening statement that that India could be in for. Well, you didn't say this, but you raised the question. Well, what about India? Well, if Trump is elected, he is talking about putting stiff tariffs. And if those tariffs go into place, then obviously, not only in India,
Yes.
but for the rest of the world, it will be a problem.
Correct.
And
Absolutely.
so, from that perspective,
Yes.
I think that would be a negative.
Yes, and that's the stated stance of Donald Trump. During his regime, he's brought it back. Ajay Bagga, India aiming to become a $5 trillion economy. How sticky an issue is this tariff one? How crucial will it be to get stronger support from an American president in our march towards that $5 trillion economy dream? And which of the two would be a better bet for the Indian equity markets as well? What's your take?
Yeah, Vikram, actually, if you see, the US voter will vote more for their domestic issues.
Yes.
The Ross survey, the University of Michigan FT survey, which they do every month, that is putting inflation right on top, and then the housing prices as the second. Immigration comes in after that. The US voter is not very geopolitically concerned with what's happening in Europe or Israel. Israel, to some extent, we saw some negative voting for Biden in the Michigan primary, where 100,000 Democratic voters voted as non-committed to express their displeasure on the U.S. Israel policy. And Taiwan is very distant. So again, I would say what is said in the political rhetoric and what happens on the ground will be very different. So the issues will be raised, but the U.S. voter is going to vote for housing being nominally 30% more in 2020 to 24. They will vote on the abortion issue. That will be a very big defining issue. It is a polarized electorate, and six swing states, like last time, will really decide who goes to the White House. So it will be a very close contest. India will largely ignore the rhetoric. We should not get influenced by it. Neither of them have done much on the H-1B visa issue.
Yes.
I think overall, a Republican administration always has been more friendly
Yes.
to India. Then, though the
But Mr.
Indians,
Bagga, when you talk about the markets in particular, when you talk about how the Wall Street has historically reacted to either of these two, what do you think this time around we would be hoping for when it comes to the American presidency?
see, we are linked in two very strong ways. One is the capital inflows, and second is our export companies, both goods and services. So those will be looked at. There will be a lot of rhetoric, Vikram, on anti-Indian IT services, anti-Indian, exporters, and for access to the Indian markets, which has been a sticky issue. We have seen the Harley Davidson issue too. Agriculture, a lot of the developed countries want an unbridled access to the Indian market for agricultural produce, which is not very politically possible for the Indian governments. We have big tariffs on a lot of manufactured goods, which again remains a sticky point that will stay. So I would think there will be some swings in the Indian markets based on the political rhetoric going right up to November. But the policies are very much similar, mildly more anti-Indian in terms of a Democrat administration.
Yes.
We have seen Republicans being more friendlier to the Indian administration overall.
Correct.
But not much
But
is
Peter
done.
Cardillo, of course, I want to take that across about the inflation point very quickly since we are out of time. Peter, very quickly, if you can touch upon how the Biden administration has been able to or not able to control inflation and how much of an issue this is going to be in this election.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an issue. People are feeling the pain of inflation, and unfortunately, inflation remains elevated. Look, I don't think there's much you can do. You know, it's up to the Federal Reserve to bring down inflation. And so far, it's not happened. It's come down, it's been arrested, but there's still threat of inflation. So when it comes to inflation, unless you rein in spending in a great amount, that might help from a political sense.
Yes.
But from a fundamental viewpoint, it's the Federal Reserve.
Absolutely.
But
at this point in time, the electorate is going to have a lot of things, like Ajay Bagga is pointing out as well, by way of the many domestic issues that are going to play out. And if prices are high, typically one votes against a party and a president under whom prices have risen. But we'll see exactly how it goes. The rematch is now a certainty. A lot of political rhetoric is going to fly around as we draw closer to elections. But of course, there will be a lot of economic issues that will play on the minds of investors, both in Wall Street and the Wall Street. But thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us on this edition of India Tonight. We'll keep tracking this. We're out of time on the show, but we'll be back with Business at 9 p.m. sharp here on ET Now. I'm Vikram Oza from me and the team. Thank you for joining us. Good evening.